Hi guys, cheers. Let's talk about this brew and the concept of slatten. Slatten, it's a Swedish word for the leftover in a bottle. If you have a party, next day you will find a lot of bottles with a small amount of beer or whatever. And these are called slattar. This concept may not be anything new, but let's do it for sport because it's funny. It's a different way to brew. You can call it a pantry cleaner. When you have brewed a couple of beers, you have grains left in a lot of different variety. So it's a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and the fridge may be full of small amounts of different hops and so on. So then you do clean out beer. The way I do it is that I have to use everything I got in a bag of grains and the leftover hops, or nothing of it. And of course then I will add the appropriate amount of base malt to that. So I went through the big box where I keep my specialty grains, and I found out that I had a lot of open bags. Can't use them all. What I found was I had 330 grams of Cara Red, 350 grams of Cara Pils. I had 370 grams of chocolate malt, 420 grams of Cara Hell, and 440 grams of roasted barley. That's a whole lot of special malts in one brew, but I decided to try it anyway, and I thought I could do something like a stout, because the amount of roasted malt, and with that amount of specialty malt I could end up on the sweet side, which could be appropriate for a stout, because I don't like the dry stouts that much. On the hop side, I pulled out from my fridge 2 bags of Chinook, one containing 40 grams and the other one 23 grams. I had 8 grams of Magnum left, and 52 grams of Willamette, and 35 grams of Cascade. At first, because this wasn't a planned brew day, I thought I would use 2 bags of USO5, but instead I decided to brew back to back on a yeast cake from my recent brown ale. That was fermented with WLP002. That yeast, high flocculent yeast, ain't that good at ferment out as the WLP001 and the USO5. And with that amount of specialty malts, I decided to mash a bit lower. So I decided to mash at 62, 63, somewhere around that, to compensate for that. And this is the recipe which I ended up with. I added some base malt, Pilsner malt, 3.5 kilograms. I also added some Munich malt, 500 grams Munich, and I added some flaked oats, 500 grams. I thought, what the hell, if I'm gonna add everything, like the saying said, everything but the kitchen sink. Let's go all in. The 440 grams of roasted barley and the 370 grams of chocolate malt, the 420 grams of caramel, and the 350 grams of carapils and the 330 grams of cara red. That's a lot of different grains. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different grains. So that's over the top. The roasted barley and the chocolate malt I added at mash out. Let it steep for 15 minutes before sparging. So I mashed this at 62 degrees Celsius and then did a mash out at 75 or so degrees. When I reached 75, I added the roasted malt. So the roasted barley and the chocolate malt, and let it sit for 15 minutes, and then I sparged up to 28 liters and started the boil. At 60 minutes I added nothing. At 40 minutes I added 24 grams of Chinook and the 8 grams of Magnum. At 15 minutes I added 20 grams of Willamette, 15 grams of Cascade and 10 grams of Chinook. And I also added some yeast nutrient and Protafloc. At 5 minutes I added 32 grams of Willamette, 29 grams of Chinook and 20 grams of Cascade. Then I chilled it down and just poured it on the old yeast cake. I started fermenting this about 18 degrees and then ramped it up to 20 degrees in a few days. And then I let it sit for almost 2 weeks. It had been caged for 3 days. And here it is. The Slatten Stout. I've made other beers. I've made Slatten IPA and different kind of Slatten. But this was the first stout. This has quite a lot of hops in it. Maybe we just can call it a hoppy stout. It did ferment out to 10-17, but it has quite an amount of bitterness to it to balance that out. Don't know if you can see anything through this because it's quite a dark beer. Can smell the hops, and you can smell the roasted barley. Some chocolate. I would say the roasted barley and the hops are most prominent. Cheers! It turned out quite well. It's a nice beer. I always add the roasted grains late because I think it makes very smooth beer. If you want that harshness from the grains, you should add them earlier. You can even divide it up, add some to get more of that astringency, burnt coffee flavor if that's your cup of tea. If you haven't tried to add the roasted malts late, please do. This one contained a lot of roasted malts. If I would have added this at the beginning of the mash, it would have been harsh, astringent, taste burnt. Now it's just smooth. It actually is very smooth because I haven't been aging it. I often found that my beers tasting the best after like 2 weeks or something like that in the keg. I don't make high gravity barley wines and so on because I don't like that style. That is a style that would maybe need some more aging, so I can't say really too much about that. There it is, the concept of Slatten, and this is the Slatten Stout. What is the English word for Slatten? Maybe someone can fill us in, or you can just use the Swedish word, which you learned today in the Swedish lesson. I'm also brewing today, and that brew is quite similar to this concept. I'm brewing up a beer with ingredients that I got for a Christmas gift from a friend. I've already shot in the video of that, not the making of the beer, but I've shot the making of that recipe. So I will upload that as soon as that video is finished. But this video was of the concept of Slatten. And there you have it. It's another way to make recipes. You might learn something. You might make a good beer. You might make horrible beers. So try it out. Cheers. Dr. Hans out.